When I was younger, I found myself facing a mountain of debt that seemed impossible to overcome. I remember one cold January morning, sitting at my kitchen table, surrounded by bills piled high, my heart heavy with despair. I had unwavering faith, but my finances were in ruins. I felt like I was failing not only my family, but also letting God down. It was in that moment of quiet desperation that I turned to the Word, opening my Bible with tears streaming down my face, asking for divine guidance. That was the beginning of a life-changing journey, one that would eventually lead to freedom, not just from debt, but from the fear and shame that accompanied it. Let me share with you the 3 verses that transformed my life, and how they can bring hope and healing to yours as we step into a new year, determined to leave debt behind. The verse that struck me most profoundly was Proverbs 22 verse 7. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. These words hit me like a truth I could no longer ignore. I had read this verse before, but it had never resonated with me like it did that day. It wasn't just describing the reality I was trapped in. It revealed a deeper spiritual truth I had been avoiding. Debt, as the Bible clearly states, is not merely a financial burden. It's a form of bondage, a chain that ties us to people, systems, and circumstances that control far too much of our lives. At that time, I was overwhelmed by multiple debts: credit cards, car payments, medical bills. Each debt came with its own due dates, interest rates, and relentless demands. The stress was suffocating, and the guilt of not being able to keep up was even worse. I felt like I was failing not just in managing my household, but in honoring God with the finances He had entrusted me. Debt wasn't just draining my bank account, it was stealing my peace, clouding my joy, and making it difficult to trust in God's provision. That verse from Proverbs became a mirror, reflecting the painful reality of my situation. The phrase "slave to the lender" perfectly described the emotional and spiritual toll debt takes. When you're in debt, it feels as though your choices are no longer fully your own. Every paycheck is consumed before it even reaches your hands, and decisions about where to live, what to buy, and how to spend your time are dictated by creditors. Debt can make you feel small and powerless, as if you're trapped in a never-ending cycle. But here's the truth: God did not create us to live as slaves, not to sin, not to fear, and certainly not to debt. This realization became my turning point. When I saw debt for what it truly was, bondage, I knew I had to approach paying it off as more than just a financial goal. It became a spiritual mission, an act of obedience to God. But I didn't start with grand gestures or unrealistic goals. I started small. I listed all my debts from smallest to largest, and I prayed over each one, asking God for wisdom and guidance. The first payment I made, no matter how small, felt symbolic, like breaking the first link in a chain. It wasn't much, but it was enough to shift something deep inside me. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of control, a glimmer of freedom. With every payment I made after that, I felt God's blessing. Progress was slow at first, but steady. With each debt I cleared, I experienced a lightness that had been absent for far too long. The chains were breaking, one by one. During this time, I learned something profound. God does not leave us alone in our struggles, especially when we're striving to live in alignment with His Word. He honors even our smallest efforts when they're rooted in faith and obedience. There were moments when unexpected blessings came my way, a rebate, an opportunity to earn extra money. Those were the moments when I felt God's presence and encouragement saying, "Keep going. I'm with you." If you're feeling overwhelmed by debt right now, I want you to know that you are not alone. It's easy to feel hopeless, to believe that your situation will never change, but that is not the truth. God's Word promises freedom, not just spiritually, but in every area of your life. Each step you take toward paying off your debt, no matter how small, is a step toward reclaiming your life. It's a step away from bondage and toward the abundant life that God has planned for you. Debt does not define you. It does not have to control you. Start where you are. Pray for wisdom. Make a plan. Trust that God will guide your steps. Every dollar you put toward paying off your debt is more than a financial transaction. It's an act of faith, a declaration that you refuse to live as a slave to anything but God's love and purpose for your life. And as you walk this path, know that God is with you, cheering you on every step of the way. As it says in Deuteronomy 28 verse 12, "The Lord will open the heavens, the storehouse of His bounty, to send rain on your land." You might be like I was, feeling overwhelmed by life and its challenges. At one point, I read a verse that felt way too grand, almost distant from my reality. It spoke about how we could lend to many nations but borrow from none. When I first came across this, I was struggling just to keep up, let alone imagine a future where I could lend and not borrow. But something about those words stirred something deep inside me. I realized it wasn't just a promise, it was an invitation. An invitation to trust in something greater than myself, to trust that God would not only meet my needs but bless the work of my hands. At the time, my life didn't look anything like the abundance promised in Deuteronomy 28 verse 12. But I decided to believe anyway. Every morning, I'd open my Bible and speak those words out loud. Bless the work of my hands. It felt strange at first, because my reality seemed so far from the promises I was declaring. But I kept praying, trusting that God's promises were true, even when my circumstances didn't reflect them yet. I asked for His blessings to fall upon the work I did, no matter how small or mundane it seemed. As I waited, I worked diligently and faithfully, treating every task as an offering to Him. Laundry, cooking, balancing a tight budget, they weren't just chores anymore, they were opportunities to honor God. Slowly, I started to see everything I did as part of a larger purpose. If God had promised to bless the work of my hands, then every action, no matter how humble, was an opportunity to claim that promise. This shift in perspective changed everything. What once felt tedious became meaningful. I wasn't working alone. God was in it with me, and He was guiding my steps. And sure enough, little by little, the blessings started coming. They didn't come all at once, like a sudden windfall, but rather in small, steady ways. A neighbor needed help with childcare and paid me for a few hours. An old hobby turned into a small side income when someone asked me to bake for an event. At first, it wasn't much, but it was enough. And every time an opportunity came, it felt like a reminder from God. I see you. I'm providing for you. These blessings always seemed to arrive exactly when I needed them. Once, when an unexpected medical bill threatened to derail my budget, the money from my side job covered it completely. Another time, a family member gifted me groceries, without knowing how empty my pantry was. These weren't coincidences. They were glimpses of God's abundant provision opening up over my life. This experience also taught me patience. Just as rain doesn't fall every day in farming, it comes in season. God's blessings often arrive in His perfect timing. I had to learn to keep working, even when I couldn't yet see the results. I had to trust that my efforts, no matter how small, were a part of His plan. If you're praying for a breakthrough, I want to encourage you, don't underestimate the power of diligent, faithful work. Sometimes we expect God to work in big, dramatic ways, but more often, His blessings come through the everyday efforts we put forth with faith and trust. Every task you do with intention, every step you take with purpose, is part of His plan to bless the work of your hands. When those blessings do come, they bring more than just financial provision. They bring a deeper understanding of God's faithfulness, a strengthened trust in His timing, and a renewed sense of purpose. You'll be reminded that you are co-laboring with Him, working together to create a life that reflects His abundance and glory. God's promise isn't just about material wealth. It's about living a life full of fruitfulness, freedom, and faithfulness. As you continue to pray, work, and trust, remember that God's storehouse is never empty. When the rain comes, it will be more than enough. And as Romans 13 verse 8 reminds us, let no debt remain outstanding except the debt to love one another. Financial freedom isn't just about getting rid of debt or having more money. It's about living a life that reflects God's love and sharing that love with others. What will you do with that freedom once it's yours? It's a beautiful question to consider as you walk in faith and trust. There's a powerful truth that I learned on my journey to financial freedom. It wasn't just about eliminating debt. It was about a complete shift in my mindset and spirit. As I worked towards getting debt-free, I realized it was not only a financial journey, it was a spiritual one. It was about becoming the kind of person who could give generously, serve others joyfully, and live with an open heart and hands. The more I focused on paying off my debt, the more I saw how it affected not just my wallet, but my entire life. Debt, I came to understand, is more than just a financial burden. It weighs heavily on your mind, your peace, and it narrows your focus. It keeps you consumed with your own needs and struggles. But once that weight started lifting, something extraordinary happened. I could finally think beyond myself. As my financial situation improved, my outlook changed. I started to see how I could help others, how I could serve without hesitation, how I could be a blessing to the people around me. I'll never forget the first time I was able to give without worrying about how it would affect my own financial situation. A family in need reached out, and this time, I didn't hesitate. I knew that helping them was part of a bigger plan, not just for my life, but for theirs. There was no fear, no second guessing. I felt truly free. That freedom wasn't just about getting rid of debt. It was about creating space in my life to love others more fully, to serve without strings attached, and to give without reservation. It's what I've come to believe is God's true plan for us, to live in abundance, not of things, but in love, generosity, and service. The more we release from our own lives, the more we make room for His purpose. Romans 13 verse 8 says, "Let no debt remain outstanding, except the continuing debt to love one another." This is the only debt we should carry, and it's one that doesn't end. Love is an ongoing process, a daily choice. And when we're not burdened by financial stress, we have the ability to live out that love in meaningful ways. So if you're still working on your financial freedom, I want to encourage you to keep going. Yes, paying off debt takes discipline and sacrifice, but it's about more than just getting your finances in order. It's about making room for God's love to flow through you. Every step you take toward financial freedom brings you closer to a life full of generosity, joy, and purpose. The truth is, the moment you become debt-free is just the beginning. The real work starts when you have the space to love others, to serve without condition, and to live with a heart surrendered to God's plan. That's the life He wants for you. One of abundance, not material possessions, but in love and service to others. It's a life worth pursuing with everything you've got. As we move into a new year, it's the perfect time to make that fresh start. I want to introduce you to a resource that could truly transform your life in 2024. It's called From Limitation to Liberation, a practical and spiritual guide designed to help you step into the new year with a renewed vision. For your finances, this guide walks you through actionable steps to break free from limiting beliefs about prosperity and lay the foundation for a debt-free life. This, combined with a guide to create a biblical financial pact, will help you unlock the power of God's promises in your finances. Together, these two resources provide everything you need to spiritually and practically leave financial struggles behind and step into the abundant life God has planned for you. This is a limited-time offer, and I encourage you not to miss out. Take control of your financial future today. Step boldly into 2024 with faith, purpose, and freedom. You don't have to be held back by debt any longer. Start where you are, trust in God's provision, and know that His promises are true for you too. If He did it for me, He can do it for you. Let this be the year you break free, embrace abundance, and live out God's plan for your life.